Behind the Line, episode 36. I am your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. We're under a week away from the end of a decade. And it doesn't seem like it. The 2010s has flown by. A lot has changed these past 10 years. 10 years ago this month, I was getting engaged. I was a young 25-year-old who thought I knew everything. Didn't realize it at the time that I knew absolutely nothing. My life has changed a lot in the past 10 years. Like my life, I'm sure yours has as well. The NBA has changed drastically over the last 10 years. In terms of star players, the league is as healthy as it's ever been. The stars are spread out. You've got LeBron, AD, Kawhi, and Paul George all huddled up together in Los Angeles. You got Luka Doncic in Dallas, Dame Lillard in Portland, Giannis in Milwaukee, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid in Philadelphia, Durant and Kyrie in New York City, Trae Young in Atlanta. The league is balanced. Over the past 10 years, the way the game of basketball is played in the NBA has changed. It all started with Stan Van Gundy, Dwight Howard, and the Orlando Magic in the late 2000s. Van Gundy surrounded Dwight Howard with 4 3-point shooters, and they played inside out. At the time, the Magic shot more 3-pointers in a season than any team in NBA history. Then along came Steph Curry. Curry and LeBron James are the two biggest stars in the NBA the past 10 years. So it got me to thinking, who was the best player of the decade? Was it LeBron or was it Steph Curry? Now, LeBron's accomplishments speak for themselves. He was an all-star the entire decade, all-NBA defender 4 years, league MVP 3 years, made all-NBA every season up until last year. 3 NBA titles, 3 finals MVPs. Those are all great accomplishments. LeBron's also done more than anyone else to empower the players. It started with the Big Three in Boston. Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen joined up with Paul Pierce to create the first quote-unquote super team. But LeBron's decision in 2010 changed the landscape. Players suddenly felt empowered. You saw guys not requesting trades, but pretty much demanding trades, like Anthony Davis did last year in New Orleans. LeBron started taking short-term deals to keep himself a free agent every other year. Now, that being said, Steph Curry is the NBA's player of the decade. All those accomplishments I just listed for LeBron, Curry has most of them too. 3-time champion, 5 straight NBA Finals appearances, 2-time MVP, 3-time NBA All-First Team, NBA scoring title. However, Steph Curry has accomplished something that LeBron never has in his 17 years in the league. Steph Curry changed the way the game is played. Curry changed the landscape of the NBA. When he came into the league in 2009, NBA teams were averaging 15 3-point attempts a game. Now you fast forward 10 years, teams are averaging almost 30. BC, or before Curry, guys like Dwight Howard or Carmelo Anthony could be stars in this league. Post-ups, mid-range jumpers, those were acceptable shots. After Curry, guys like Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony are all but extinct. Your big men are now expected to be proficient 3-point shooters. Another reason I say Curry's the player of the decade, he literally pulled a franchise out of the doldrums and made it an attractive free agent destination. And he did it the right way. Even when LeBron was in Cleveland, he could not get guys to come up there and play with him. That's one of the reasons why he left. Steph Curry didn't have to go out and recruit guys to join him. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green were both drafted by Golden State. People will argue that, LeBron won Cleveland a title, which is true. But he left for Miami first and joined D. Wade's team. Steph Curry built his own. LeBron had to be taught to be a leader. Remember that first year in Miami when the Heat started slow? I think they were hovering around 500 a third of the way through the season. D. Wade had to force LeBron to take leadership of the team. That hasn't been the case with Steph Curry. Curry became the leader of the Warriors organically. He didn't have to be forced. It was just natural. Curry's the better closer. Tie game with 10 seconds left. Who do you want with the ball in their hands? Steph Curry or LeBron James? I'm taking Curry all day. I also feel he's a better ambassador for the NBA. LeBron James is a polarizing figure. I also feel like he's addicted to the fame. He's constantly inserting himself into political discussions. It seems like he's out to prove that he's more than just a basketball player. His focus late in his career has shifted away from basketball and more towards Hollywood. If you don't think LeBron's addicted to fame, just look at what happened the other night in the game against the Clippers on Christmas Day. AD took a last-second fadeaway shot to end the first half and ended up falling into the lap of Kevin Hart, who was sitting at courtside. It was a funny moment, one that you knew was going to go viral as soon as somebody put the video up on social media. LeBron wasn't even in the game at that point. He was sitting on the bench. He ran all the way across the court, sat in Kevin Hart's lap himself, and inserted himself into the moment. You wouldn't see Steph Curry do something like that. You rarely, if ever, hear anyone have a negative thing to say about Steph Curry. And lastly, Curry's the player of the decade because he's dominated LeBron James. All 3 NBA titles came defeating LeBron. He's 3-1 against LeBron in the finals. He led his team to the best regular season ever when they surpassed the Bulls and won 73 games. I remember at that time, people were talking about the Golden State Warriors dynasty possibly surpassing the Bulls in the 1990s. Though, looking back at that now, that was ignorant. There will never be another NBA team have a run like the 1990 Chicago Bulls. It'll never happen. 6 titles in 8 years, and you can argue the point that if Jordan hadn't sat out that season and a half when his father was murdered, that they would have won 8 straight. All right, let's get to the NFL. I saw a report yesterday that Jameis Winston is going to request $30 million per year this offseason in his next contract. The same report stated that he would be unhappy with the franchise tag, obviously. Now, I don't blame him not wanting the franchise tag. NFL careers are short. These players want long-term contracts for security. They want to be protected. I also don't blame him for asking for $30 million. I mean, ask for $40 million and go lower. Get whatever you can get. The thing is, Jameis Winston isn't going to get what he wants. Not after the season he's having. Tampa brought in Bruce Arians to help Jameis Winston eliminate his issue with turnovers, and it hasn't happened. He's on the verge of becoming the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in the same season. He's got 28 right now. He's actually gotten worse under Bruce Arians. Before this season, he was averaging 15 interceptions a year, which is god-awful. I waffle back and forth on Jameis Winston. Sometimes I feel like the Bucs should move on from him. Other times I feel like he deserves one more year. There's no doubt that the guy can play. He leads the league in passing yards. Tampa's got a top 5 offense. Even in losses where he has multiple turnovers, Tampa's still only losing by an average of 9 points. So while giving opponents multiple free possessions, he still has his team in position to win games. If he can clean up the turnovers, Jameis Winston has the potential to be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. But that is a big if. That's been said since his arrival in Tampa. If only he could clean up the turnovers. But when is that going to happen? This isn't a one-off, Jameis just had a bad season. This is a trend. This is a reality. This is who he is. When you say Drew Brees, you think precision accuracy. When you say Jameis Winston, you think interception. Jameis Winston's career record is 28-41. He's had one winning season in 5 years, 0 playoff appearances. At this point, it's unclear if his turnover issues can be remedied. When Bruce Arians was asked about it, he said the chances were 50-50 that Jameis Winston's mistakes could be corrected. He said the corrections have been made, but the results aren't happening on the field, which is obvious. The thing is, Tampa isn't going to be in a draft position to draft one of the rookie quarterbacks. So going into next season, they either stay with Jameis or bust, go into a rebuild. That's not happening with Bruce Arians going into his second year. More than likely, they're going to give him the franchise tag. At best, a short-term 2-year deal. The big news breaking this morning involves Antonio Brown and the New Orleans Saints. AB is in New Orleans this morning working out with the Saints. The only thing missing on this Saints offense is a deep threat downfield. Ted Ginn's production's fallen off since 2017. Some of that's on Drew Brees. He hasn't been as accurate with the deep ball as he was during his prime. He's lost a little bit of his arm strength. But we've seen that improve in recent weeks. He's hit Jared Cook deep a few times over the last 3 to 4 games. It's also been reported that Michael Thomas has a hand injury, though it's not thought to be serious. They're just holding him out of practice. So maybe Sean Payton is looking to AB for an insurance policy should Michael Thomas's injury become more severe. Obviously, if New Orleans signs AB for the playoffs, an unstoppable offense becomes even more unstoppable. Assuming he's in football shape, he would be a massive addition to this Saints team. Especially if the Saints had to go on the road to Green Bay or Seattle, where it could be really cold for an NFC Championship game in late January. That being said, I think that Sean Payton is doing this as a fuck you to Roger Goodell. The chances of Antonio Brown touching the field this postseason are slim. He's been on a 3-month unpaid suspension from the league for violating the personal conduct policy, while Roger Goodell drags his feet in this investigation into the sexual assault claims. This is unprecedented. AB has never been formally charged by the police. He's been kept away from football far longer than other players who have violated the personal conduct policy. Whether you like or dislike Antonio Brown, the league's treatment of him hasn't been exactly fair by any stretch. What Sean Payton's doing is basically forcing Roger Goodell to act. Since New England signed AB earlier this season and then ended up releasing him a week later, no other team has touched him. So Goodell's had no reason to speed up an investigation. If the Saints decide to give AB a chance, it forces Goodell to make a decision. Sean Payton and the Saints have nothing to lose. If they sign him for the playoffs and he's not allowed to play, his pay's not coming out of Gail Benson's pocket. It'd come from the league-wide playoff pool. It also gives New Orleans rights to him next season, while also forcing Roger Goodell to make a decision that he's continued to delay. This is vintage Sean Payton. Finally, after all these years, he's found a way to get his revenge on Roger Goodell. He was suspended an entire season for Bountygate, which everyone thought was harsh. That suspension and the loss of draft picks set this franchise back a couple of years. Then you had the non-call and the pass interference in the NFC Championship game last year that cost the Saints an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl, with an officiating crew that was mainly from Los Angeles, that the league, I guess, didn't think was a conflict of interest officiating that game. It's a known fact that Sean Payton and Roger Goodell don't like each other. Matter of fact, there aren't many people that like Roger Goodell. Sean Payton is far from the only one. And it's not because he's the guy with the power. Paul Tagliabue was the NFL commissioner for years, and he was beloved by players, coaches, media, the fans. Adam Silver has a great reputation as the NBA commissioner. Matter of fact, his first real blemish came with the China stuff back in October. That's not the case with Roger Goodell. He's been vilified seemingly since he got the position and hasn't done himself any favors with some of the decisions he's made. He always backs the owners, never the players. Though I will give him credit for one thing. He's handled Josh Gordon's issues really, really well. We talked about that last week on the podcast. If this situation ends with AB signing with the Saints, and he's actually allowed to play in the playoffs, I do have one concern. I don't think he'll be a problem in the locker room. Sean Payton and Drew Brees aren't going to allow that. His reputation's taken a beating this season, so I think Antonio Brown would be on his best behavior for the few weeks that he's with New Orleans. My concern is, I don't think that he's got enough time to learn the offense. The Saints have the most complex offense in the league. They have more personnel packages than any other team. They're constantly switching players on and off the field every play. The success of this offense is all about precision and timing. Drew Brees has got to be able to trust his receivers. He's got to know where they'll be even before they make the break to get there. That's not something that can be learned or developed in 1 or 2 weeks. So even if Antonio Brown were signed, his role in the offense would likely be limited. All right, let's get to our college football playoff bets for tomorrow. Oklahoma at LSU, current line LSU minus 13.5. This should be a high-scoring game. Both teams feature high-powered offenses, and the weakness on each team is the defense, though I think LSU's defense is light years better than Oklahoma's. LSU's the more tested team. The Big 12 is a spread offense, weak defense conference. LSU has beaten everyone in their path, put up 37 points against a Georgia defense that was one of the best in the country, put up 40-plus in Tuscaloosa against the Nick Saban defense, beat both Auburn and Florida, two teams with great defenses. Joe Burrow should be able to score with ease against the Sooners, especially with their best pass rusher, Ronnie Perkins, being suspended. The same's going to be true, though, for Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback the Tigers' defense will face all season. I realize they faced Tua at Bama, but he came into that game injured. Lincoln Riley has had damn near a month to prepare his offense. He's had extra time to prepare. This is too many points. These offenses are evenly matched, but I think Oklahoma has the better coach. Ed Orgeron's had a great season. He's won Coach of the Year. It's been special down in Baton Rouge. But Lincoln Riley is an NFL coaching candidate. I like LSU to win, but the Sooners to cover. Take Oklahoma plus 13.5. Clemson at Ohio State. Current line, Clemson minus 2. Dabo Swinney and the Tigers haven't played a ranked team all season. They've yet to be tested. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. And he's been reminded about it constantly the past month, and he's not happy about it. Clemson is coming into this game feeling disrespected by the national media. All that's done is given Dabo and his team extra motivation. I've mentioned their weak schedule several times, even went as far to say that Clemson didn't belong in the college football playoffs. The problem with a weak schedule when you get to this point, when you've played subpar opponents all year, it's extremely difficult to kick it into high gear once you do play a tough opponent in a one-and-done game. You haven't had to do it all season. What happens if Clemson goes down 10-0 early? How do they respond? We don't know, because they haven't had to do it all year. Ohio State's a juggernaut, both offensively and defensively, and they're battle-tested. Went down 21-7 against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, scored 27 unanswered points in the second half. Number 1 scoring offense. Number 2 scoring defense. They only allow 12.5 points a game. I think Ohio State jumps out to an early lead, never lets it go. I feel like I'm getting the better team, a team that's had to fight their way to get here all season, along with free points. I can't put my money on a Clemson team that I really don't know anything about. Taking Ohio State plus 2. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow with my NFL picks for Week 17. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. Leave a comment in the section below with your college picks this weekend. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. I will see you tomorrow.